We have headphones for Robert. Let's get them all situated. I will go ahead after we talk for a little while and take your phone calls. How are you, buddy? Nice to see you. Thank you for coming in.
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me, Cal.
I almost feel bad right out of the gate without even talking to you because I woke up this morning and everybody's yelling at me. We didn't even say anything yet, and everybody's yelling. I've made it very clear, and I'm sure you know this. I have to stop and thank Tuttle for a second. I don't know how you know Tuttle. I don't know how you know Tuttle, and yet you still came in the studio. But Tuttle was responsible for bringing Robert here. And I am a very fair guy. I have been very fair about this situation since it happened. Mm-hmm. To give you a little bit of a background on me, I have several guns. I live in a nice neighborhood. I live in a gated community, and I have had no incidents there. However, if I do hear something strange outside or something that may threaten my family or my neighbors, I will be the first one to go outside with my weapons like the law allows me to do and be ready to protect myself. But at the same time, I am also very confident in our legal system, and I believe that once your brother goes to trial and this plays out and we hear all the evidence, that's when I start making some decisions and decide, in my opinion, what's really going on. And I think that's the fair thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what one would hope would happen.
Fix that mic for Robert so we get it right in front of him there so we can hear you loud and clear. There you go. Perfect.
Thank you. I think that's what one would hope, would happen eventually. I've been obviously disappointed at having my little brother from the beginning be called a racist.
Right.
Having our family be charged, accused, whatever you want to call it.
What is the nationality of the Zimmermans?
We're Hispanic American, mix. We're American. That's our nationality because we were born in this country. But
right.
Our mom is from Peru. Our dad's Caucasian, born in Virginia, raised in California.
Good thing your mom was in there. If you weren't, if your name was Hans and you had blonde hair, the place would be going crazy already.
It happened to be just this unspoken truth that nobody knew that about George. And in the very beginning, even Benjamin Crump just admitted recently we didn't know anything about him. We just wanted an arrest. Well, they seem to know that he was white.
Yeah.
A lot of people seem to use that word as the ultimate indictment on his credibility. Why are we taking this guy's word at its face value? If for a lot of reasons. Number one, he's cooperating with police. Number two, he reenacted it the next day. Number three, he did voice stress analysis, which is now public on his defense website.
Right.
And, but white seemed to be the reason that we should not believe that what he was saying happened is in fact what transpired.
And we all know that when you turn it into a white-black issue, and with the Trayvon Martin being a kid, it will attract the likes of the Al Sharptons and the guys who will make an issue sexier than it is and get that national attention over here.
Right.
It certainly makes it more of a story when you put it out that way.
Well, I think going forward, and a lot of people have started to now ask, why do these people do that? Is it for money? Is it for notoriety? Is it for a combination of both? Is there something that they stand to gain? Are they really helping us move forward in race relations ultimately? Does that help anybody? Does it help anybody to go out and say, like Jesse Jackson did, that was reported to me, that George shot Trayvon Martin in the back of the head?
Yeah.
Were you there, Jesse Jackson?
No.
You weren't. You don't know.
And to speak so out of turn like that without not knowing any of the information, but to how irresponsible that is for a guy like that who speaks to that many people.
Sure, and on many levels, I mean, how irresponsible for the mainstream media, the legacy media, as it's been referred to, not to hold someone like that accountable for their words, when clearly that's not the case. Why is the only thing that we say to Al Sharpton or Jesse Jackson, thank you, we've learned so much from you today? Why don't we say things to them
because white people are afraid to speak their mind because right away they get vilified for giving their opinion. There's a certain amount of guilt that still goes around, and then people are afraid. People are afraid, like right away. I have not come out and defended your brother. I have not come out and condemned your brother. But as soon as I said I was having you on the show today, I'm the villain right away. I'm supporting George by having you on the show. I have not had any conversation with you prior to this one right now other than an exchange of tweets that were public saying thank you for coming on the show and that you would be on the show today.
Correct.
So you came in here not knowing. Well, I want to hear. I'm very interested in this, like the rest of the state and the rest of the country is. I'm very interested in hearing from somebody who knows your brother, who knows one of the key players probably better than most people.
Yeah, I think George has this. George gave back to his community in a lot of ways. It's come out that he mentored two children who happen to be African American. Now, some would make the case that there are blacks overrepresented in the legal system.
Right.
I would tend to agree. I think George would too.
Okay, but if he was racist, he wouldn't. If he was racist, then he wouldn't be in the mentor system mentoring black kids.
No, and he didn't ask for any particular race or not. It just happened also to be a surprise, when he gets these kids and gets to know them, that their father's in prison for life, and so breaking that cycle takes people like George to take some kind of responsibility for what happens around them in their community. Even when the government cut funds to that program, George continued to mentor those children because he felt that they needed to know that they were valuable. He didn't want them to end up in the same, loophole repeating cycle of people ending up in prison.
Right.
And George, when Sherman Ware, a man of color, he was a black man, he was also homeless. So for one of those two reasons, when a police officer's son attacked him and it was caught on tape, and the NAACP told George, we don't have resources, told him in writing, by the way, we don't have resources to help you secure justice for this man. George went out on his own. He went to Sanford churches, to black churches after their services, talked to the people there, distributed flyers that he had authored on his car, went to the town hall meeting in Sanford to denounce what had happened,
right,
as a person not having equal access to justice, either because of their color or because of their socioeconomic status, which was a homeless person.
Very interesting. Now, and no one see, it's hard because he can't talk to anybody now. So do you guys have the conversation? Do you say to him, hey, look, I'm as your brother, I'm going to go out and be the family spokesperson. I'm going to go out and try to do the best I can. People are accusing you today of a lot of things, including one guy who even suggested, which was far-fetched, but that you may be even trying to taint a jury pool by getting this information out there. Well, obviously, look, I have a brother.
Sure.
You want to take care of your family. But if you feel strongly about this situation, it's almost your obligation to get out there and defend him in public.
Well, you mentioned a jury pool, or let's say a judge, in a self-defense immunity hearing, if it never gets to a jury. There isn't a law, there isn't a court of law in the land that can absolve you of charges of racism or that can restore you somehow to the status of a normal, honorable family that you enjoyed, that
right.
you earned. Before the race card deck shufflers went out and did what they did to a decent person's reputation. So if you know better and don't make the case now, you can't wait until there's some kind of legal resolution to say, oh, and by the way, those things you were saying about us, they're all untrue. Those things you were saying about George that kind of prepared the bed for this prosecution, which has been now brought up by his lawyers, is alleged to be malicious. There's something afoot here, either political or other motivations or other pots of gold at the end of the rainbow, far outside of the scope of justice. If you don't make the case now that that's wrong and that you know better, it's not gonna help to make that case the day that there's resolution.
Sure, and you've given all this time, and anything that happens in the public eye with George comes out as a negative for him, and you have to. Somebody has to be out there if there is a truth telling the truth. This has not been easy for you, though. You've gotten death threats. This is not something that you're not getting paid to do this. You're not. This is not leading you to a life of glamour and celebrity by appearing on Piers Morgan's show,
right?
And this
leads
fine
to a life
radio
of
program.
Hiding.
Seriously,
yeah. Literally.
How hard is it? Do you still live in the area? In the area where George lived?
I live in Central Florida.
Okay, but that's what I'm asking.
Sure.
What is your address? No, I'm just kidding. But you live
ask
in Central...
Roseanne Barr. She'd be happy to, or Spike Lee, either one of them.
Spike Lee. Now that's one of the most irresponsible things. Spike Lee tweeting the address of what he thought was George Zimmerman's house was so irresponsible, not only because he put George's life in danger, but he had the wrong goddamn address. And the people that live at that address, he put their lives in danger because there's lunatics out here. What have been some of the things that you gotten?
Touching on that, I think you're kind of touching on yourself as a broadcaster. Spike Lee tweeting the McLean's address the night I went on the air originally with Piers Morgan, March 29th. some of the people who were on the peripheral of the story, like the guy who received George's phone number by accident.
Right.
All those people seem to experience the same kind of hate and vitriol and racial animosity directed at them simply for having anything to do with George, his family, this case. They're not even the real people. They're not even the family, and they're not even George.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like, it just kind of represents the tip of the iceberg of the hate, the animosity that's directed towards us that we deal with, which is why we hide. We take our safety seriously. And I hope one day when this is resolved that, like I said, a court won't be able to absolve of racism, but when it is resolved, that we'll have some semblance of a normal life moving forward.
Give me an idea of what your life is like. Can you go pull your credit card out at Publix, or can you go? I mean, you look a lot like George.
Right.
That's another thing working against you. Make sure you grow that hair out. 'Cause you shave your head, you're gonna look just like George.
Exactly.
But how difficult has that been for you to live a normal life?
Well, I did pull my credit card out at a Starbucks, actually, in Washington. And I was with a 2-year-old infant, and I was told that I looked like George Zimmerman, and that if I was any of the Zimmermans, that I would have been beat up by this person who was serving me, the person next to them, and all of their friends.
Really?
Yeah, that was in Washington, which is why I had to leave Washington, where I originally relocated to temporarily while this, sort of in the beginning, in the early days of March. I avoid whenever possible identifying myself in any way, shape, or form. And a lot of us, we have a very close, we identify ourselves with our name. When suddenly your name means it could mean the end of your life or ending up in the hospital. People have gone to the hospital in this saga for less. Some people, in the name of justice for Trayvon, were sent to their death, or were sent to critical care units, simply for somehow people who beat them up thought that they were getting justice that way.
Oh, I mean, the Black Panthers coming out and offering a bounty. I mean, how they didn't just swoop in and arrest those people for offering a bounty, and then right here in Tampa Bay and St. Petersburg, we have some lunatics. I don't blame you for fearing for your life. Could your brother ever have a normal life again? Is he's going to have to go into almost what if they put him on the stand and they find him not guilty, and then some sort of evidence comes out that overwhelmingly proves that he acted in self-defense? He still is not going to be able to live a normal life.
I don't think that we're going to get to normal for a long time.
Yeah.
I don't think that anybody but George, who walks every day in his own shoes, is going to know what that normal looks like. I can tell you from being his brother and being the Zimmerman that's out in the media and in the press trying to set the record straight, that he's going to have a hard time because, people will accuse me of getting paid, licensing pictures, making money off of a dead person. It's always been a tragedy to us. We've never licensed photographs, writings, anything like that. Anything I've published is public and free.
Right.
The social media.
What
presence.
is something? Let me ask you about that. People have asked me about selling autographed pictures. What is the truth behind that?
Yeah, I just don't understand. If you want to criticize away, like George's attorney put it, but how we get from signing a thank you note, which was always George's intent in his TheRealGeorgeZimmerman.com video. He says, I want to thank each and every one of my supporters individually when time permits.
Right.
Now, if you actually read the posting on the Legal Cases website, the time has now come. It wasn't advisable before. It is advisable now. I've never gotten a card that wasn't signed in my life. So if you're going to send a card to somebody who's supporting you and signing it, how we get to selling autographs, I think, in a word, is sensationalism.
I get you. Do you? One of the things about George that they describe him was being overzealous, almost waiting for something like this to happen. I as a man, I can kind of relate to that a little bit. I'm certainly not excusing it for anyone, but there comes a time where a man is faced in a masculine type situation where he wants to bow up and be the hero. Do you think that this might have been the case, knowing George? Do you think George...
Well, there's really two ways you can go with that answer. First was when you said he's overzealous. I hear kind of the old criticisms, which were vigilante, gun-toting cowboy, self-appointed captain. Well, it's important to remember that George was never self-appointed. There was a community meeting to discuss the whole neighborhood watch to begin with, and the community members who attended, several dozen, as is in evidence, selected George to
Right.
be their leader. Now, the other place you can go with that answer is that George was criticized for calling the police, 40 times in a year or thereabouts, depending on how you read the calendar. I think that goes to show there's 40 or more times that the police responded that they didn't have a problem with George and there was an incident, and keeping in mind he lived in a community of around 200 homes where in 13 months the police were called, according to the Miami Herald, 400 times.
Wow. I have had situations with the police in the last 12 months, and the police have advised me to call them. You got a guy in traffic that's being a lunatic. I mean, I could never imagine driving and some guy swerving or some guy gives me the finger to bother the cops with that, but they tell you
Right.
to call them. That's what they're there for. That's a smart thing to do.
Right.
So the fact that he did that should not be working against him.
Right, and I think that, again, into what George's character is, I don't think the word is overzealous. I think, if anything, he was optimistic that one day, he would be able to live in relative peace.
Yeah.
Maybe perhaps his neighbors would enjoy relative peace. Maybe he wouldn't have to run into a neighbor and say, I'm sorry to tell you, but, such and such was breaking into another neighbor's house today, or, he's caught people in the act.
So when the sun goes down, George didn't disappear into the basement, put on his costume, grab his nightclub and his weapons, get in his car, and go looking for trouble.
No, and despite what people would have you believe, he was not, about the rules of the neighborhood watch and not carrying a gun and this and that. George acted that night as a private citizen going to the grocery store, a Target.
Yeah.
He encountered someone he did not recognize. We know now why he did not recognize that person, because they were not really a resident of that home. They lived in Miami,
Right.
And he didn't recognize that person, saw someone in the rain, thought it was suspicious, and did what he was supposed to do, as any citizen should do, is call the police if you think something is suspicious and warrants further investigation by the cops.
What the story is that the cops told him not to pursue.
The story that we've been sold
Right.
is that the cops said, we don't need you to do. Now, that's on the recording, but the way that people sort of twisted that was after the cops told him.
Yeah, right. After the cops told him that we don't need you to, it's been put out there that that's when he went into superhero mode and said, I'm going to do it anyway. That's
Yeah.
the story that we've been made to believe.
Well,
What is the truth?
The truth is that even before that, he was told apparently by people. This isn't based on evidence. This is just conjecture, and it was at the time. Why did he get out of the truck after being told not to? I haven't seen any evidence. If anybody still believes that somebody told George, don't get out of the truck, I would encourage them to actually read the evidence before they're saying, yeah, why did he get out of the truck? Not to follow, or into that whole, we don't need you to do that. Well, he didn't do it. He lost sight of Trayvon Martin. He says on the recording, yep, he ran. I can't see him. And then he says, an unfortunate thing that didn't help him out. But he lost sight of him at that point. He went to end of the street. He got the street that the last street where he could see Trayvon Martin running from, and on his way back to his truck, he was attacked and his nose was broken. And now we have those pictures, which speak 1,000 words.
You think Trayvon Martin attacked him because he was scared?
I can't get in the mind of Trayvon Martin. I know that other people have asked me that question before, and when George did the reenactment, which, by the way,
But we know he was scared. I mean, he said to his girlfriend that he felt like somebody was following him.
That's not actual evidence. That's something that he said to his girlfriend that Mr. Crump has presented, and attorneys have gone out doing, repeating. I counted in one press conference, Mr. Crump said that this witness was a minor 5 times. Now suddenly it turns out she's not a minor. Mm-hmm. She was 18 when she was deposed, and I don't know if she was a minor at the time. I don't know her birth date. It's in evidence. It'll come out, but. That's not a source that we've heard from any type of legal venue, a vetted source that came out in court. This phantom witness, the state star witness that supposedly was on the phone at the time, so therefore we, quote, know that he was scared. He was, if you listen to George when he reenacts, he wasn't scared enough to go home because he came up to George and circled his truck. I just don't understand how someone who's scared. I've been not scared and made it to my home walking in a straight line. I don't circle people's cars with my hands in my waistband or what have you, and if you...
Yeah, if I can interrupt for a second, let's take, because in my mind, when I heard this story unfold, in my mind, all this time, I picture this guy on the phone with his girlfriend, doing nothing wrong, maybe gets a little spooked by George, and then thinks George is following, and then finally has a confrontation with him that doesn't work out. But in a reality, take the black away from it, take the white away from it. Picture a teenage kid, a teenage kid, and you picture yourself when you're that age. You're the tough guy. You're the guy who is not afraid of anything. That picture also, which I found, which I'll get back to that point in a second, but the picture was the best. The picture that they released right away of Trayvon, this little kid, this sweet little kid that you saw, was nothing like the kid
the many
now.
pictures.
Right.
That's right.
But the kids out there now confronting George in he's circling the car, going to the waistband, maybe like a tough guy, and pretending he's got a gun. That's what I think people don't take into consideration. And again, I'm not saying that cleared your brother to do anything, but I think that we don't hear anything about what the truth is. We hear what their lawyers put out. I have a million things that I want to ask you, and everything's kind of running together. Let's take a break. Let's take a breather. One of the other reasons why I'm very excited to have you on the air today is because you were the one who suggested taking phone calls.
Sure.
Not afraid. That's something that I respect, because our listeners are normal jerk-offs, but in a good way. Because they'll call us out on the phones don't ring as much as they do, and when we say something wrong, the phones go crazy because they all want to point it out. So the fact that you are willing to talk to these people and answer questions to the best of your ability, I respect that. And know also that there's going to be there's a whole new audience from around the country listening to the show today, simply because you're on the air. Some of who already hate you and your brother without even hearing a word of you speaking today, and some who are just going to call up and ask questions like I am today, so that they can help make a decision in their own head.
Right.
So thank you. This is Robert Zimmerman. He is the brother of George. I'm going to take a break, and when I come back, we'll go to the phone lines, and we'll take your phone calls. We'll also talk about the picture today that is all over the news and get your opinion on that. Before we go to break, real quick, I want to know, what is your communication like with George? You talk to him today? Do you talk to him once a week? How does that go?
It's privileged. I don't talk about it. I get asked that all the time, and I think that George deserves some semblance of a normal life, if at the very least from his family members. I was asked if he's seen his mom. Yes, he's seen his mom. What if we end up on the stand one day and everything we ever said to one another is now subject to scrutiny and attack and everything else? So it's privileged. I don't talk about it. Also for security reasons, God forbid anybody saw us at the same place at the same time. That would kind of be proof positive that is George Zimmerman. So. Yeah.
Do you? I wonder. It's funny because the guy's not in jail, but yet he's already in jail.
Right.
He's stuck because he's not rolling up to Taco Bell at 2:00 in the morning when he's got an urge for a crunchy taco. I guarantee that.
And a curfew.
Yeah.
And a GPS unit. Yeah.
Crazy. Okay, let us take a break. Galvin, by the way, who works here on the show, did an interesting prank, a phone call thing that we'll play you later, where he randomly called people in the Orlando area, saying that he was with the George's legal team, and they needed a safe house for George to live in.
Oh, Lord.
And, just to get the reaction. And, man, if I were him, I'd stay in the house, too. I would never come out. I'd keep the bracelet on and blame that. Robert Zimmerman is here. He will take your phone calls, 1-800-771-1025, or locally 727-579-1025. We'll get to your phone calls next. Welcome back to the COWHEAD Show. 727-579-1025 or 1-800-771-1025. We have a full board of phone calls, but I'm going to try and get through as many as possible. In the studio with us is Robert Zimmerman. He is the brother of George Zimmerman, and he is here talking about his brother and answering some of these important questions and also clarifying some of the misconceptions that we may have about the situation with Trayvon Martin and the shooting, and also, about George himself. I think this is your duty as a brother to do this for your brother. But I also think that it is great that somebody even though you're getting death threats and it's caused you to now have to live a sheltered life, that somebody is coming out and putting truth into some of these things. My dad, who has followed this case closely from the beginning, mostly because he's bored, he texted me and said that it's informative. He's learning a lot of things he didn't know.
Well, thanks.
And now there's a bunch of people on hold that have questions for you, and I will go to them. Listen, I don't expect every one of you to be as respectful as I have been today. Some of you are going to not like Robert because of his brother and because of the situation. That's fine. But at least just be respectful when asking your question, or else I'm just going to cut you off. Michael, you're up first. You're on the air with Robert Zimmerman. What's up, Michael?
Hey, hey, Kevin, how are you?
Kevin. Who is Kevin? Robert is here.
Robert, I'm sorry. Grew up in the 70s. Anyway, Robert, I think your brother's a hero and a role model, buddy.
By the way,
Thanks.
I've gotten that a lot today, and I don't know. I don't think you think your brother is a hero, do you?
No, I think he's a strong person. I've learned a lot from his strength. He's had to be the one who actually went to jail. He is the one actually named, George Zimmerman. I don't think he's a hero.
And he, I mean, I don't know. I don't know your brother, but I can't imagine. Like I always talk about on the air that I'm not afraid and I'll go out there. But if this ever happened to me, and I had to take someone's life, whether it's a kid or an adult or a criminal or an innocent guy, I would be devastated, I think. And
Right.
I would imagine I would imagine he would have to have been the same way.
From the very beginning, it has never been absent from our minds that this was a tragedy.
Yeah.
On all levels. It was a tragedy, obviously, for Sabrina and Tracy and Javaris, who were without Trayvon now. It was particularly a tragedy because Trayvon was 17. All of us have made mistakes when we were 17. Most of them didn't cost us our life, or
Right.
we wouldn't be here today. So there was that element of sadness that overcame us. We obviously didn't expect at the time that this would be where we'd find ourselves today, but it has never not been a tragedy for our family, and I expressed that to the Martin family directly. I did that from LA, from a different side of the country. Again,
Have you heard from anybody off of a camera, off of a microphone, from the close,
I've heard from Michael Skolnick, from Russ Simmons. From the Global Grind, Russell Simmons, political advisor.
Right.
We've been exchanging emails, public emails.
I saw that you had written them a letter, and then they responded back to you.
And he's on the board of Change for Trayvon or Justice for Trayvon, one of those organizations.
Yeah, there's a lot of Trayvon organizations. Can you imagine if you could see the difference if you were to come out with a Justice for George Zimmerman organization, you're automatically a bad guy. But the Justice for Trayvon guys are have this connotation that they're the good guys.
Well, I think and tying into that is why. Is it necessarily race? Are there other motives, like people making, for example, what happened to George in his situation, a referendum on gun laws, period? Like every case is the same, and we should just abolish guns, and that should be the end of it. Or a referendum on the Second Amendment of the Constitution,
I've been looking at the tweets to try and figure out why people who are saying what. You could tell which ones the racist ones are because right away they're black, white.
Right.
And a lot of the white guys who are condemning your brother already are saying the kid. I think that is a sticking point for a lot of people who have kids.
Sure.
They automatically feel you absolutely change when you have a child.
Sure.
Every incident you hear that happened, a child gets molested in Seattle, a kid gets crushed in Maryland, you feel like that's your kid once you have a kid. And I think a lot of that anger is where that comes from.
I think that happened, as we learned last night, when an image is released, when an image is made public, a picture speaks 1,000 words. Now, dozens of pictures of a 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old kid that misrepresented the physical attributes of Mr. Martin when he attacked George play into how somebody would perceive somebody like that. George had a mugshot. He happened to be wearing an orange shirt. The news ran with in his jail uniform, that's the only picture we had.
Right.
Now, looking back, 2020, it's very telling that what we knew of George was that he is a white man who had been to jail, because he happened to be in an orange shirt when his old 2005 mugshot picture was taken.
Yeah, it's interesting. The newspapers love to do that. I have never committed a crime, but yet every time they write a story about something we do bad, they use this horrendous picture of me that they have. And then if we do something good, they use one of our press pictures.
Right.
It's funny how they do that, how that picture is used
Sure.
to manipulate the story. Let's talk about this picture that we have today. Now this picture comes out of George with his face badly beaten. In fact, we have Mike Tyson on the show a little later on today, and it looks like he has gone a round or two with Mike Tyson in this picture. And there's the picture on COWHEAD TV right now. I have not seen that picture until today. So right away, the first thing I think is that I've never seen this before. The picture I have seen, his nose doesn't look anything like that. This can't be real. But the picture's been verified as authentic by the court, correct?
It's really beneath the dignity of the case to either accuse the prosecutor or the defense here. That this is some kind of modified, edited, whatever picture. This is actually, from all we know, the first picture that was snapped of George, of his face in light after
and this
the
picture
incident.
has been around before, but the only picture that was around was a grainy gray picture, and this is the first copy, the first digital copy that has been, that is cleaned up that you can see.
Right, and it came out last month, thereabouts the 29th, something like that, of November. And, when things come out, they're published, as is the new procedure for the defense website. But you have to make sure that you're not violating any rules, or that whatever should be redacted is redacted. Now that picture came out, I think it says a lot. Can you defend yourself when you look like that? Should you not defend yourself because you'll somehow be the scapegoat for every possible injustice that's ever been perpetrated on a minority ever because you defended? How many more bones?
That guy got his ass kicked.
Right.
I'm going to tell you right now, that guy got his ass kicked. I don't know. I have not seen the pictures of Trayvon Martin's body, but I don't think in a fight like that both people look like that. The only time that happens is in those Clint Eastwood movies where they fight in the street for an hour and a half.
Right.
That guy in that picture right there was getting his ass kicked. That nose is demolished, that lip is bloodied, and that face is beat up.
And the nose is broken. So had I been in George's shoes, I've never had my nose broken. From what I hear, it's one of the most disorienting injuries that
think
you can
about when you were a
sustain.
kid and you get hit in the face with the basketball. You could feel that for a half hour.
Right.
Once you get hit in the nose, you get hit in the face. I remember I got hit with a basketball in the nose. It's happened a bunch of times, but you can feel that ball against your face for the next half hour.
Right, and that was basically the greeting, and then it was compounded from then on, and so I guess what we have to examine, and we will examine when it comes to light in court, when the actual photos are presented the right way. Sure, there's only, as some would have you believe, 2 gashes on the back of his head, but those are only the 2 hits that managed to make gashes that big from a person who was screaming out, "Help me, help me, help me," because he thought the police were on the way. There's psychological injuries that happen. There's losing your breath from screaming and shouting,
The simple adrenaline. Anybody who's ever been in a situation, a fight type situation like that has the adrenaline rush, and sometimes you can't catch your breath from that.
Right.
I want to point out we get a full board of phone calls. I'm going to get back to them right now, but I also want to point out we're not screening the phone calls. We ask you who you are and where you're calling from, and that's it. I'm taking them as they came in. Wendy, you're on with Robert Zimmerman. What's up, Wendy?
Hi. I wanted just to make a comment. I want to applaud Mr. Zimmerman for his eloquence and coming on and representing his family the way they do. But as a mother of a 16-year-old child who have very open communication with, I want to just say this, is there are so many different avenues and drugs that are available to kids right now, to even the good kids in the privileged neighborhood, that I think that when you see a child who's got a history of being the good kid, that perhaps there's a possibility that he was on drugs that night and beat the living daylights out of your brother. And
yeah,
I
but
just wanted,
you know what, Wendy? Let me take the drugs out of the situation because we don't know really other than marijuana, and that's not going to make you fight. You're a 16-year-old kid who's usually the good kid. I probably hate him. Not really your kid, but just in general. I hate him at the movie theater. I hate him when I'm trying to eat at a restaurant and he's with his friends. Those kids that you see are different when they're not with you. That, I think, is more likely than the fact that this kid was on drugs.
It's possible, Cal, but what I want to express is this, is having survived my ex-husband being an addict and seeing the difference in behaviors, there's a strong possibility that whatever happened, that it wasn't just a young little boy that was innocently taken. Unfortunately, it wasn't a black or white issue. It was a lot more to it, and I wish that the average person would think more about that. I cannot imagine having this happen and losing a child, but just understanding that, to me, it's not a race issue. It's look at Mr. Zimmerman's face and look at the facts and try to get past the color.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for the call. I don't know where the drugs play into there, but Brian, go ahead. You're on with Robert Zimmerman.
Hey guys, hey listen, I want to say this and take the race out of it. If you look at this young man, okay, if he was scared, the first phone call that he would have made would have been to the cops. The second thing that he would have done was what we would have done when you were a little kid and you were scared of someone being after you, and that was you would haul butt home or to a safe place. You wouldn't call your girlfriend and then go back and retaliate. See, the thing is that we all forget about when we're out somewhere. You see these kids nowadays, 15, 16, 17, 18 years old, forget about them being in a group. That they sit there and they will have this, I'm bigger than you are mentality, like you were saying a second ago, Cowhead, as far as like being in the movie theater, where they don't have that I'm afraid of getting in trouble.
No.
Their whole aspect is, you know what, I'm going to kick your butt.
Yeah, I didn't have it. I didn't even have it.
You.
I didn't have it either. When I was a junior in high school, I beat up an adult one time. He deserved it. But once you do that, you feel like you could take on the world. When you're of that age, you have a mentality that I'm assuming, I don't know, that he may have been scared at first, but then also it's not the cool thing to do to call the cops or to run away, especially if you think you're a tough guy. So the idea that he might have come out and circled the car and said, "What's up? Why you following me?" and there was a confrontation is very likely.
I'll just quickly touch on that. I don't know that drugs came into play. I know that the fact that Mr. Martin's body was tested for drugs and that George was not, apparently, allegedly, from what we knew then at the time, tested for drugs, enraged people. Why test the body of a person who's dead who can't tell us what happened and not the person who's alive and may have well been under the influence of drugs? And I actually think that some of those questions are fair and have a lot more to do with how the police go about their procedures than they do with what George was presented with that night, which was a real and rational fear of his life or further bodily harm. Now, having said that, I would suggest sometimes, I know it was the case with me, teenagers, when they're not in their geography, not where they're going to have to be accountable for what they do. I've misbehaved. You've misbehaved. Everybody who's 3 hours away from home in somebody else's community, not around their own neighbors, not under any kind of supervision, might they act in a different way? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, and I don't want to even attempt to get into this person's mind, Trayvon Martin's. But just as talking like that mother did before, kids do all kinds of things, and you suggested too, when they're not. They're one way in front of their parents, they're another way when they're 3 hours away, it's unfortunate what happened. And if we want to ask questions about Sanford Police Department or police in general and how they do their job, that's fine, but that doesn't indict George.
Well, no, and then one of the things I think also is that the police will pull you over for a suspicion of DUI. If I'm out, if I myself, I don't drink and drive, but if I'm out late at night and I'm driving on a main road to go home, cop will sometimes pull you over to check you out, and then at that point, while they're talking to you, they decide whether or not to test you any further. They couldn't do anything with Trayvon because he was dead. The only way to test him was to do the test. George, they used the skill that they have by doing the DUIs and all the other, he obviously was displaying nothing to make them want to give him a test.
Right, sure. I was in an automobile accident when I was 17. I thought I had messed up badly, and the cop came, made sure I was okay, and then I looked at him and I said, "Well, aren't you going to test me for alcohol?" He said, "No, why would I do that? You don't smell like a drunk. You're not acting like a drunk." They do this every day, all day long, and they're pretty good at assessing.
Let's talk to Bonnie. Bonnie, you're on with Robert Zimmerman. Hi, Bonnie.
Hi, how are you?
Good. What's happening?
Oh, I just wanted to have a really big question here. I am a sufferer of post-traumatic stress disorder, and I know that the only way that you get that is from a severe head injury or some kind of blunt force trauma. And what can we do to ensure that George has safety when this catastrophe is over? All I hear about is the street justice that wants to harm George, even when he's found innocent. And will the judge be addressing this and hold all those accountable that are posting these threats?
I don't. Let me tell you, I'm going to answer that for you. No. The question, they're not doing it now. The Black Panthers in writing had put out a bounty, a financial bounty for the death of George, and nothing was done.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
that is a public putting a bounty on someone's head. That is horrible for him to do. Now, I've been in communication with George, and he is not this mean, ugly person that they have portrayed. This is horrible what they've done to him. It's total injustice. It's reverse racism, and this really needs to have justice for George to ensure his safety when this is over.
What kind of relationship do you have with George?
I have written to him. I have offered him a house.
Really?
Yes, I have.
Oh, okay. Well,
I
too
really
bad.
believe I've been following the story since it's been out, not because I'm bored, but because a similar thing happened to me in my apartment. I believe George is 100% innocent.
You have a pool? Maybe I'll come over and stay with you for a little while.
Yeah, I don't have a pool.
Bonnie made the point about the bounty being put on George's head. That day was the day I decided to speak out. That was it.
Yeah.
My brother called me the day I turned 31 and said happy birthday.
Yeah.
And then he called later to say, by the way, happy birthday, and the police are going to be calling you soon, and you have to answer their call, because we didn't answer our phones at the time because
Sure.
everybody in the world was calling. The police called. My home was no longer safe to be in. It doesn't surprise me that the Black Panthers are going to act the way that they do or others when there is an opportunity for them to advance their own agendas. What does surprise me is that Xochitl Hinojosa, the spokesperson for the Department of Justice, had no comment. We were just forsaken by our government, and that's what scares me the most.
That should scare everybody. That should scare everybody. What if they decide they don't like you? What if they don't decide they don't like me because I said something that they didn't like?
Right, or we're not worth protecting. We're not
Yeah.
worth informing. We're not worth now. In fairness to Florida Department of Law Enforcement, and I won't name the special agent's name, but the Florida Department of Law Enforcement was the one that made contact with my local police and me in my home to let me know that it was not a good idea to be in my home and that it wasn't safe. It wasn't the FBI or anybody
Right.
at the Department of Justice or anything like that. So
No,
thank God that they bothered to do that.
That's
at least.
insane. That's insane. You hope that at the very least you get justice served there. You get a minimum amount of protection that you expect as a taxpayer, if anything.
Right.
And you got nothing, and that could be anybody.
Sure.
They didn't make a decision because they don't like George. They just, I don't know. That blows my mind. Let's talk to Preston. You're on with Robert Zimmerman. Hi, Preston.
Good afternoon. Hey, thanks for putting me on. I got a question. Where would we all be if he had just stayed where he was at and reported what he saw?
Who? George? Because
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I don't know. You can say the same of both people involved. Where would we be if Trayvon had run away and gone home? Where George stayed in his truck and went the other way? I don't know.
Yeah.
Why would we speculate on that?
Just, why wouldn't he just report what he had seen and let them do their business?
Well, sometimes, Preston, thanks for calling. The why we could play these infinite situations back
Right.
to when they were both
Yeah.
6 months old, and on and on and on. I have been myself in the situation where I've had to call the police for one reason or another, and in kind of, maybe it's the heat of the moment, maybe it's the fact that you're talking to law enforcement, maybe it's a combination of the factors. When you're being asked by them, what are they doing now? Where is this person now? Can you see what they're doing? Can you tell me what they're wearing? Are you sure it's just one person? Are
Yeah.
you sure it's not two people? Are you sure they're both male? What are they wearing? What race are they? Whatever. You kind of find yourself being the eyes and ears on the ground in that moment, rightly or wrongly, for what you perceive to be the police.
And he is a
maybe
guy with experience doing that. I mean, we already talked about him being appointed by the neighbors.
by his own neighbors.
Yeah.
That's right.
And anybody who's ever made a 911 call, I saw a cop car one time in a median facing the opposite direction, and I called it. I said, look, I don't know if there's anything wrong, but it just looked weird. And they ask you a million questions, and I'm like,
Sure.
hey, I'm 2 miles away now. I'm not a cop. I don't care that much. I'm just kind of letting you know. But
Right.
in that situation, yeah, they're keep. All right, let's try and get a couple more in. Neon, you're on the COWHEAD show with Robert Zimmerman.
Yeah, what's going on? I just got a couple of questions, if I may ask.
Sure.
This is involving the picture that came out today.
Okay.
All right. The first question I have is, why is it after the incident occurred, your brother declined to go to the emergency room? And
Right.
the second question I have.
Well, let's get an answer for the first one first.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
There's documents that have come out today based on a deposition that show that he was in the back of the police car, and honestly, I don't think it's the call for a person to make who's just had their head bashed into concrete. And according to what we know now, that's come out in evidence from the paramedic who treated him, a person whose head is 40% covered in blood and nose has just been potentially broken. I don't think they should make that call. I know that George had expressed to me at the time that he didn't have health insurance. He thought that this was going to be, a very expensive hospital visit. George is a tough guy. He thought he would, just
Right.
muster
You don't
it up.
know the extent of the nose injury. At
You
that
don't
point.
know, but now other things may come out that are not my place to disclose now, that other people may have had different opinions about whether he should have gone or not gone to the hospital, other people perhaps in charge, of that situation. And I think some people who are very ethical in law enforcement or the fire or rescue service understand that sometimes when people decline treatment, we're not talking about a broken finger. We're talking about someone's head could be in danger and you need to get them to an emergency room. I wish that wouldn't have been George's call to make.
Sure, I understand. Neon, go ahead. Your second question.
All right, and that leads me to my second question. Now, if you're, in that situation where you're in a life or death situation, like he says, my first thing, if I'm in that situation, I would want to go to the hospital to get my checked out to make sure my safety and my injuries are okay. But the second question is also, this is according to Mark O'Meara yesterday, that there are no x-rays for a broken nose or a CT scan to prove that his head was bashed in and, any, concussions or anything. How can,
I think
say that and,
I'm not a physician. There's definitely symptomology involved with concussions. There's pupil dilation. There's all kinds of other things that happen to you, which we're teaching coaches to recognize for, high school sports and other things.
Right.
He was seen by a doctor. It's that doctor's call to say, this is what I think happened, but this is what I think should happen now in terms of diagnostics. No, the doctor didn't take an x-ray to confirm that the nose was broken. You'll have to ask a doctor, and one day that doctor may be asked,
why?
Why did you think that you could call it a broken nose? And the answer will be forthcoming in the right light, which is in the light of court, and it's public, and we'll all have these answers. And they're fair questions to ask now. I don't mind somebody, asking or having a different opinion than I do. However, because you didn't go to the hospital does not mean you're a murderer. Because somebody who should have made that call didn't send you to the hospital does not make you a murderer. And even using that word or suggesting that that's what transpired, I think is premature.
Neon, what do you think? Are you insinuating that it was some sort of that they're exaggerating the wounds?
Well, to me, it sounds that way because also I've listened to the recordings with Officer Serino, and he said that he did extensive research as to the injuries that he said that, he was punched in the face, 12 to 25 times, and his head was bashed, and it wasn't consistent with what his physical nature was. Now, if, I'm not no medical expert, I'm just going on what I've heard from the case and what I've read on the case.
So let me ask you, what do you think about that picture? Because when I saw that picture, I was like, Jesus, that guy got his ass kicked. What do you think?
Yeah, I saw, he looks like he would have had, some injuries, but, the fact of the matter is that, now, if you're not going to go to the hospital, because if I had a broken nose, that's the first place I'm going, no matter what. I wouldn't want to go to the police station and just say, well, hey, I'm going to go to, police station and ask questions. I'm going to go make sure that I'm okay first, and then I'm going to go talk.
Let me put this out there, Neon. You just killed a guy. You just killed a guy, and you didn't want to kill him. I think that might be paramount in the decisions that you make. I don't know if I necessarily want to be poked and prodded and sit in an emergency room and do all that other stuff. I'm not making excuses. I'm just throwing out situations of why he may not have wanted to go. There's something else weighing on his mind that night that might have been paramount.
Right, and I would suggest also that people who had suggested, that George had not been arrested. Well, there's all these different definitions. It depends which state Supreme Court you ask. When are you arrested? You know, if you're put in handcuffs, if you're taken somewhere against your will, you're not free to leave by people who you don't want to be with. Some states, jurisdictions, et cetera, define that as an arrest. You know, he went for a ride downtown to answer questions about what had just happened. Now, I agree. I don't think George should have made the call. I think George should have gone to the hospital. His lawyer has even come out and said, gee, I wish there were an x-ray that we could just hold up and show everybody, look, his nose was broken. But we're going to have to be patient and let the doctor who made that call answer for the call he made in court.
Yeah, and
Can I
thank you.
just say one more thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Well, that's the thing that I was not understanding is if you're claiming to say that my life was in danger, and you said this on Piers Morgan, that you said that your brother was one hit away from being fed, being spoon-fed and in diapers. I mean, if you're going to make that accusation out in public, when you think
I also
said go to the hospital.
I also said that George was losing consciousness from what he told me when this was happening to him, from the screams, from having his nose and mouth obstructed, from having his face bashed in, from having his head slammed into concrete, and then from somehow Mr. Martin attempting to disarm him. He had a combination of injuries. It wasn't just one thing or not that happened. And I said, if Mr. Martin had gotten a hold of that gun from a combination of these injuries incapacitating George, he could have shot George.
Yeah.
We don't know what would have happened to George.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. All right, I want to try and get one more, maybe two more phone calls in before we let Robert Zimmerman go. I'm assuming this is Curtis. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Carmen, you're dumb. Sorry, Carmen can't spell to save her life. Curtis, how are you, sir? What can we do for you?
Great. Thanks for having me on, COWHEAD. Hey, I just got a question. It seems like a lot of these cases are tried in public opinion long before they ever go to trial, and the public has their opinion about how this is going to shake out. Then you got the weirdos like Spike Lee and all these people tweeting and giving their opinion. But my question is probably to you, COWHEAD. What's your take when the President of the United States comes out and he says, if I had a son, he would look like Trayvon? And you think about the President coming out and saying that?
I'll tell you exactly what I said when it happened, okay? And I touched on this a little bit earlier in the show today. It's not smart for the president to say that. However, I'm going to tell you where I think it comes from. I honestly, and it's not because I like the guy, I don't think it's because he's buying into the race thing. I think what he's saying is that no matter what the situation is, whether George was right or whether George was wrong, you still have a young kid that was shot and killed that day. And that president is looking at that and seeing himself as a young kid, seeing the fact that he doesn't have any sons, but if he had a son, he could look like that. When you have kids, you have kids, Curtis?
I do.
When you have kids...
16-year-old and 11-year-old.
Okay, so when I watch TV and I see that there's child molesters, I go, oh, what perverts. But once I had a kid, I wanted to get on a plane and kill every child molester. You take things a little bit more seriously. You put it right in your situation. And I think what he did is he spoke from his heart and didn't speak like the president. And go ahead.
Let me just take this one step a little further, because I think what irritated me about the whole thing was, George's picture, he was mugshot and he was an orange. And then Trayvon was when he was like a 13, 14-year-old good-looking kid.
Right.
I wondered if the president would come out and say that if they had the real up-to-date picture of, when he was 16 years old, flashing gang signs. Would he come out then and said, hey, if I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon?
No, if Trayvon had gold teeth, the president wouldn't have said that at all. Yeah, I believe me. But also it would have fired up a different. You look at the picture and you see that sweet young kid, and you think that could have been my son. You see some gangster with his pants down below his ass crack and two giant gold teeth, and you're like, I'm glad that kid's not my son. In my opinion, the president was speaking more from his heart than as the president, and the fact that he is the president is what got everybody all fired up. Sure. And I think that's where that comes from. Let me thank you, Curtis. Let me try one more. Daryl, go ahead. You're the last call for Robert Zimmerman.
Yeah, thank you for taking my call, Mike.
By the way, I got a Curtis and a Daryl. Two of the blackest names with two of the whitest guys. Go ahead, Daryl.
Well, I am married to a black woman, so I guess I get half points for that, right?
Good for you.
I got Carmen syndrome. So anyway, I haven't made up my mind either way on this case. Obviously, you can't until you actually hear some of the proceedings and the trial stuff. But I do have two observations and two questions.
Go ahead.
One of them is, I understand the 911 operator and you try to get as much information. However, when you are instructed by that 911 operator not to follow, not to pursue, okay, the questions stop, and, okay, do not pursue, we'll have law enforcement come into the area. At that point, you stop. Now, I know we can trace it back to coulda, shoulda, woulda, to when he was 6 months old. as Mr. Zimmerman just said.
No. What I said is there is no evidence to suggest that he did not in fact stop. So any suggestion to the contrary, other than what George actually said, is conjecture or hearing something that you want to hear because you've made your mind up that way.
So are you saying George stopped when they told him to stop?
George stopped. George said, "I've lost sight of him." He ran away, and he continued to the end of the street to get a street address. It was nowhere near. He did not go. And if you, I don't even know. I don't even think it doesn't sound like from what your caller's saying that they have seen the video of the reconstruction that George did the next day with no attorney present, by the way, and in seeming cooperation with law enforcement. George narrates points exactly what happened, exactly where Trayvon Martin jumped out of, exactly where he was when he lost sight of him and he was told, "We don't need you to do that," exactly where he walked to, the street sign or the street that he wanted to get the name of, and where he was when he was attacked. So this notion of continue to follow after being told not to, there is no evidence of that. Not today, never has been.
Does that straighten things out, Daryl?
Well, but if there was a threat there, I mean, if he felt threatened by Trayvon, for he's calling law enforcement, okay, and I realize he's only reporting.
Well, hold on, let me jump in here, Daryl. Both of you correct me if I'm wrong. I don't necessarily think at that point he felt threatened. He is taking a look at him because he's out of place. He is suspicious of him. That's why he's on it. Then he felt threatened on him when the guy was beating his face in.
Right.
Okay, but what led him to get out of the vehicle to confront Trayvon himself?
I think
for Trayvon to be able to jump out and jump him, what led him to get out of the vehicle? I mean, if you're driving down to see where the next street sign is or the cross street or a street address, then you're in your car, you're driving.
No, there was no road where this next street was. The road ends. He parked his car. That's it. And also it seems to be playing out kind of how I'm trying to visualize what you're saying, that there was somebody, George was driving his car and just jumped out and just lunged at somebody. Trayvon went between a row of homes. The place where George was when he was following, to use his own words, or to use the dispatcher's words, was against a row of homes. The back of the homes, fences. There are no numbers on those homes, so you don't know if you're standing at the 400, at the 500, at the 600, or what the difference is in geography if you give the wrong number to this dispatcher. So I would encourage this listener and many others, watch the reenactment video. It really speaks volumes about people wanting to know exactly what happened that night, more so than the Hannity interview, more so than anything else. George there on the ground, in his own words, saying, "This is what happened to police without an attorney present," really speaks volumes about the case.
I find
go
ahead, Darryl.
And on the flip side, I do appreciate this new photo being released, because therefore you see that, okay, here's not a guy who basically just shot a kid and came out clean when he took a shower, that there was damage here, there was a struggle, and there was a fight on one way or the other. What I'm afraid of, though, is what's going to happen is you're going to get a similar court with what happened in Barrico with the basketball court case. And I know there's differences there to where stand your ground is not really going to be the defense that your brother's going to be able to take. But I am curious, and I do want to see how it plays out in court, because, I haven't made up my mind yet, but these are just observations to somebody with all this preliminary talk.
Well, I appreciate you not making up your mind yet. I think that's the way to go, and asking the questions and doing the research, and like Robert said, look at the video. Maybe that'll answer some more of your questions. I'm sorry to cut you off, but we got to wrap things up. This is a very interesting situation on so many points. Your brother, whether he's found innocent or guilty, is in for a long time of trouble.
Yeah, and if I may, there was a caller before that who had brought up the president. There's a petition right now that's on my Twitter handle, @RZimmermanJR, that links directly to the White House's petition page to have the people who were responsible for prosecuting George maliciously investigated by the Justice Department for violating Georgia's civil rights. I've actually had the response from people. They don't trust the government. They don't want to have anything to do with the White House. They are somehow afraid that, signing up, registering, creating an account They're going to
Start
be
following you.
Right. Big Brother's going to start looking. And, I don't think that, I don't know why. It may be from the president's remarks that they're intimidated that way. It may be from this picture circulating of Miss Sabrina Fulton and the First Lady apparently, at some event
Right.
having a good time. It really scares me in terms of, is George going to, if a trial is the correct venue for eventually for justice to be seen through, is he going to be able to get a fair trial when you're socializing with the First Lady and when the president basically adopts the deceased as his unborn son? And I understand your perspective and where you're coming from, but that petition has really alarmed me that so many people can feel that intimidated by the whitehouse.gov website, as if they were to participate in any way, they're somehow endangering themselves.
I got to tell you, when's the trial? When are we looking at?
The trial date is June 10th. There is a self-defense immunity hearing that is going to happen before that, presumably in April. But, things can change, things move. You know how the court is.
It'll be an interesting next couple of months, and this will certainly be watched by the entire country. And then, we didn't get into this today, but you have another case of a white guy killing a black teen who he says pulled a shotgun on him. They have no evidence of a gun. I think, in my opinion, based on what I know about that case already, that guy's guilty.
Yeah, and
clearly that guy doesn't like black people.
Well, I can't make that statement, but I do think that we need to be less concerned when bringing up race about race as a factor in a crime as opposed to facts of the crime, because I think if we just make it about race, we overlook a lot of the things that can speak about or speak to someone's potential guilt or innocence.
I think you're right, and I think that you're a good brother by adopting this cause and getting out there and doing this, because this is not making your life any easier by getting out and doing it. I hope your brother and your family appreciate it. I don't know. Does he need DVDs, your brother? What does he got? What does he do? Does he have internet? Does he get porn where he's at?
He does the best that he can. He could use a little bit more exercise, as everybody saw in his last court appearance, but it's hard to get around.
Home. What
Same
are you
thing.
gonna do?
Yeah, same thing for me. So I can totally empathize with his
Derek
situation.
Jeter too. He picked up a couple extra pounds. What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Robert Zimmerman. Very nice to meet you.
Thank you, Colin. Thanks for having me.
Let's stay in touch, because even though I have a stupid name, we could do a serious segment every once in a while.
Great.
And this is something that affects everybody. It affects parents. It affects people in neighborhoods who want to protect their own privacy and their, we are in a state where it's very similar to the Wild Wild West rules when it comes to having guns, and it's important to know what the limits are to these laws and when they apply and when they don't. And it's also like for a guy like me, who has guns and wants to protect my house, I also don't want to kill anybody. I don't want to kill any kids. I don't want to kill any adults. I don't want to. Let it be a lesson, if anything, to know for both sides when you're getting into that situation.
Right.
Hopefully, some good comes out of it. Pleasure.
I hope
yes.
so.
Yes.
I hope it does.
Pleasure to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you. Thank you.
You and Tuttle have a long walk back to Orlando.
Yes, we do.